I get to the address and I don't know, my backup was still quite a ways away, but I'm going to make contact. So I knock on the door and she yells, "Help, police, help." So I put that out over the air. I said, "Step it up for whoever's coming to back me up." I got yelling and said, "I'm going to go in. Figure I better check and make sure it's not unlocked before I kick the door." Mm-hmm. It was locked. Kick the door and can see a guy on top of a gal, probably 20, 25 feet in front of me, hands around her neck, on the floor.
Welcome back, everyone, to Cooking with Casey, the Redeem podcast. It is such a pleasure to be with you once again today, and thank you so much for tuning in. Today we have a very special guest, retired Grand Rapids police officer, Mr. Carl. I'm going to let Mr. Carl introduce himself. Thanks again. Go ahead,
Carl. My name's Carl Holtzeder. I'm a retired Grand Rapids police officer. I spent 5 years in the U.S. Navy. About 12 years into law enforcement, started a business. Now that I'm retired, I have a couple small businesses. One is a commercial property, and the other is an investment advisory business.
Okay. And then once again, we've got Pastor Mark back with us again.
It's good to be here, Casey. Good to see Carl here this morning and looking forward to his story today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm excited. You've shared some of his story with me, and I'm really excited about it. So, without any further ado, let's just get into it. Brother Carl, what's your story? You can start at any point. You can go way back and work your way forward, or...
Well, I guess going way back is probably the best because I grew up in a really good home, and I know a lot of people don't have that.
Yes.
Especially, you said you were in law enforcement also. You saw a lot of brokenness.
Yes.
My wife always says that she's jealous of being raised in that kind of environment. Both my parents were Lutheran school teachers. We were in church every Sunday. I just thought that was how everybody grew up. And so that was just normal.
Yeah.
Ended up going through 12th grade, high school at a Lutheran parochial school. Chapel every day, religion class every day, and I had a religion pastor that had thought that with my knowledge of dogma it'd be good to go into the ministry, and I thought, oh goodness, no. That's for people. That's for other people. And I had an older brother who became a school teacher, and my parents being both school teachers, I think everyone thought maybe that might be the route I'd go too. But when I graduated from high school, I really didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. So, and my parents never made much, so I thought college is going to be on my own, and my brother got a full ride scholarship. He 50% was sports and 50% was academics for a full ride, and I wasn't that good at sports, and I probably could have gotten a partial scholarship on academics, but not nearly like he did. And he was driven. He knew when he went into college exactly what he wanted to do, and unlike many who change their major 5 times, he went right through and became a teacher. So anyway, I ended up joining the military. Joined the Navy. Didn't really know too many people from my small town. I don't know if you know where South Haven is.
I do. I'm originally from here.
Ah, okay.
So I do know, yes.
Okay, South Haven, about 50 minutes south of here, right on the lake. You know, I grew up a mile from Lake Michigan. And always would see the boats out there. Of course, we didn't have a boat, and I didn't really know anyone who ever went out on Lake Michigan, but you'd see them out there. Just always thought that was fantastic.
And by the way, thank you again for serving our country.
I always felt a little bit guilty on that because I saw how many people had it much worse than I did. When you hear my story in the Navy, my wife says it was more like a 5-year
Vacation.
yes.
Where were you stationed at?
Well, I probably shouldn't jump quite there yet.
All right.
Okay.
We'll get there.
When, like I said, I really didn't know too many people or anyone that ever talked about being in the service. But it was something that always kind of hung heavy that I wanted to do. And growing up in South Haven, I had this vision that, I could be on a destroyer or something and out to sea, traveling around the world. And so that kind of excited me. But my parents expected me to go to college. So one day I came home and we're sitting at the table, and it's a small table, probably about like a little bigger than this and a little bit longer that way, and my mom's sitting there and my dad's sitting there, and I said, "Oh, by the way, I joined the Navy today." That was the first they heard about it. And my dad said, "Any way out of it?" And I said, "No." And then he said, "When do you leave?" I said, 2 weeks. And I saw a tear go down my mom's cheek. And not another word was said. The rest of the meal.
How old were you at this time?
I was 18.
18.
Just graduated from high school. And didn't want to be talked out of it, I guess. So I joined, and when I talked to the recruiter, they said the quickest and easiest way to go in was undesignated. Well, I didn't know really what he said. He made it sound great. You can see all these jobs, and then you strike for the one that you want. And anyway, I found out later on that that's the worst thing you want to do.
But they got you.
Well, they did, but I'm sitting in, I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but there's a fair amount of classroom environment in boot camp. And I got pulled out of classroom one day to another empty classroom where there's 2 guys in suits. And they have my file there, and they said, "We see you're undesignated." And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, we're recruiting for naval intelligence, and we think you'd be a good fit." And I said, "Well, what would I do?" And they said, "Well, we can't tell you that, but we can tell you it's a lot better than undesignated. Are you interested?" And I said, "Sure, I'd be interested in that." So they said, "Okay, after graduation from boot camp, you'll get your orders." Finished up the rest of boot camp. Never heard a thing. About 3 days after boot camp, I had orders to Lowry Air Force Base, Denver, Colorado. And it's closed now, but at the time it was a joint military. All 4 branches were there, and the Navy's intelligence training school was there. So that was my first plane ride ever on a big commercial airliner. Was navigating from Chicago to
Colorado.
Yeah, Denver. I think it was called Stapleton at the time. I'm not sure if it still is, but anyway, I got there, went through the school, then this is 1986. I remember getting orders then. Oh, I should probably go back a bit. You know, I didn't have a huge amount of military bearing at the time. We had this short little instructor named, he was Senior Chief Estigoy, and he was about, I don't know, 5'3" or something. And those old military coat racks, they'd have 3 hat racks above it. And I would always take his hat from the bottom one and move it to the top. And he'd yell, "Holtzeder, get out here. Move my hat back where you got it." And anyway, this will become a little bit important later on. We fill out our duty preference sheets, and I put East Coast, I put overseas Europe, overseas Pacific, and I said last choice of all is West Coast. And if I got to go to the West Coast, please make it like northern West Coast. I don't want to be down in California or. So anyway, I get my orders, and the first stop is going to be a two-month additional, another school in Key West, Florida. So I'm going from Denver to Key West, and then with the ultimate destination, it's a F-14 squadron at Naval Air Station Miramar, San Diego, California.
Right where you didn't want to go.
Well, years later, I asked my boss out there, how in the world did I get this F-14 squadron? And he said, remember Senior Chief Estigoy? He and I were great friends on the USS Blue Ridge, and he said, I got just the guy for you. Because when I got out there, I loved it. But I think when I got my orders to that squadron, I don't know that I even really knew what an F-14 was. But while I'm down at Naval Air Station Key West, this movie comes out in 1986 called Top Gun.
Yeah.
And I watched this at a theater down there, and I realized that's where I'm going. So for a young kid, now by then I'm 19, and I'm thinking, I'm kind of excited about going to San Diego.
Yeah.
Now, it ended up being a pre-commission unit, so there's a term called plank owner. It goes way back to the old wooden ship Navy, where if you're on it when it's commissioned, you're entitled to 1 plank when it's decommissioned.
Wow.
And so I stood it up. I was there while it got commissioned. We had the commissioning ceremony, and promptly, I wasn't even there quite 2 years, and they decommissioned the squadron due to Graham-Rudman budget cuts at the time. Well, I had my 4-year enlistment, and I'm probably halfway through it, and they said, well, we need to send you someplace, and we got about 2 choices. They said, you can go on the USS Midway out of Japan, or we got this P3 squadron out of Hawaii. Well, you're talking to a detailer, and he goes, I said, well, what's the P3 squadron? And he said, well, it's classified so that I don't even know what to tell you you're going to be doing. And I said, well, that sounds pretty interesting, because okay, so I joined that squadron, and I had to commit to an extra year, and so I did about 2.5 years in Hawaii at that squadron. But you know, a P3 is so large, it doesn't land on a carrier. It uses land bases, and we flew all over. And the best part was the deployments were usually 3 to 6 weeks at a time. Unlike a ship that's going usually 6 to 8 months at a time.
Right. My daddy was in the Navy. He was on a destroyer.
Well, and I think that's the vision that I had, when I joined. But I was undesignated too. Probably the funniest thing that I get chuckles out of, I spent 5 years in the Navy because they were all deployable assets, the F-14 squadron and the P-3 squadron. Never set foot on a ship. So if you read my DD-214, it says that I got 5 years sea duty, and I did not spend one day aboard a ship. I get so many. In fact, one of my good friends, I love this story. His son's probably been in the Navy 15 years, and when he joined, his parents gave him a going away party, family, friends, etc., good-sized party. And he came up to me and said, I used to hear you telling Navy stories to my dad. And he goes, that's a big part of why I joined.
Wow.
So that felt really good. And he's making a career of it.
Awesome.
It's amazing how our actions and words have an influence on other people, even when we don't know it.
So back to getting out of the Navy. My dad flew down to Key West when I graduated from that school. They flew out to San Diego to visit me there. When they flew out to Hawaii to visit me there, and that was about a month before I was getting out. And my dad pulled me aside one day and said, "Are you sure you're doing the right thing getting out?" He goes, "You got 5 years. You only have 15 more years for pension." And I said, "You know what? I'm not sure. I knew that 5 years ago I wasn't ready for college. But over those 5 years in intelligence, you work a lot with officers. So I saw how they lived. I saw how they got paid versus how I did. And I thought, I got to go to college." Because that was really the only difference between
them and
Right. There was a F-14 pilot that had a history degree from a small college. I thought, it really doesn't matter. And he's flying these, $40 million jets, living the life. And so, nothing wrong with a history degree.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've always loved history, but I didn't major in it. I honestly still didn't know what I wanted to do when I got out, and I had multiple ideas floating through my head. The last thing that I really wanted to do was be a police officer.
Now, you didn't want to go to California. You did. You didn't want to be a police officer. You were.
There's a theme developing here.
I'd say God set my path.
Yeah. Now let me add that. Let me just kind of back up here just a minute. Your faith at this time, were you still grounded in the Lord, or just kind of?
At this point, yes.
Okay.
It wasn't until later in life that I kind of got lukewarm.
Okay.
I'd say I still believed, but probably not really.
Acted on it.
Right.
Okay, I got you.
Maybe going to church once or twice a month thinking, that's good enough. The rest of the time I'm going to sleep in because that's, I don't have a lot of weekends, so that's my day.
Excuses.
Yeah. Just became lukewarm and, I still believe, but If you only go once or twice a month, that's enough.
Okay.
And
I'm just trying to get a feel of the timeline.
That was my law enforcement days.
Okay.
Earlier. In fact, I'll leave that for a bit, but yeah, I got out of the Navy, signed up at Grand Valley out in Allendale, which if you're originally from here, you probably know where that's at.
I've been to Grand Valley.
Signed up for general classes, not having a clue what I wanted to do. But the GI Bill wasn't real good in those days, so I still needed to find a job. Mm-hmm. And at that time, this would have been 1990. So I went in 85, got out in 90. Went to the office where they had a job book. It was a 3-ring binder. This was before computers were very, very big. So they slap a 3-ring binder in front of you, and I'm flipping through that. And at that time, pretty much every job was flipping burgers or selling T-shirts in the mall. And that's Woodland Mall because we didn't have a Rivertown yet.
Right.
So that's the other side of town. And nothing's really grabbing my attention until I see this taking crime reports, taking crash reports, tagging abandoned vehicles. It was an internship at Grand Rapids Police Department. I could do an internship there. That sounds fairly interesting. In intelligence, I wrote a lot of reports, so I'm pretty good at that. Mm-hmm. I can write a crash report. I can write a crime report. I know how to do that. Put on my suit and tie, because that time you couldn't just download an application or fill it out online. You had to go pick up a
paper.
Yeah, an actual little booklet. I don't know, it was probably about 4 or 5 pages that had to fill out, but had to drive in from Allendale to the police department. So I put on my suit and tie, drive in to the training department there to pick up the application. You'd have think they never saw anyone wearing a suit and tie before. Because when I walked into the training unit, they're getting up. Who are you? What are you here for?
I need an application.
Yeah, I said I called about an application for the intern position. I said, where are you going? I said, Grand Valley. And they said, well, how old are you? I said, well, I'm 23. I spent 5 years in the Navy. Oh, what'd you do? And so they said, oh, well, get that application back to us. So I did. And before you know it, I got an interview with the 5 captains and the deputy chief. At the end of that interview, the deputy chief said, we're hiring officers right now. I think you'd be a better fit for that. Well, I'm in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'd have just stayed in if this is what I wanted to do. I said, I want to get my college degree.
Right.
So I'm like, what do you say to that? And, Lord, this intern position would be perfect for me. If I like the job, I can apply down the road, and if not, I haven't wasted your time or my time. So that bought me some time. That bought me 2 years of college, and then I was seeing the pay that the officers got and versus what the interns got. I saw that, the city has this little thing called tuition reimbursement. So I can go full-time or part-time to finish up my 2 years. And actually it was about 1 year because they sent me to the academy, and that burned all my electives. So I had 3 years coming out of the academy and started at GR. Now, I started as as an officer in '92, and at that time there were still a lot of old timers, that had come out of the Vietnam era, and the seniority, they had all the seniority. We were bottom of the barrel. There were guys with 23 years that were stuck on second shift because third shift was more sought after than second shift.
A lot quieter. To a degree.
Yeah. So 95, they passed a millage to hire 95 more police officers. By then I had finished my college degree, had met a gal that I figured, okay, this might be the one. And all of a sudden these Vietnam era ones start retiring like flies. So my seniority went up, the pay had gone up significantly in my 3 years, and okay, maybe I'm staying here for a while longer, because originally the plan was get your degree and get out of Michigan. It's cold in Michigan, Spend a winter here?
Why do you think I live in Georgia?
Well,
I've had several people say, "You going to move back to Michigan? You spend an awful lot of time up there." And I said, "Nope, I am not. My blood has done got thin."
Spring to fall, you cannot beat Michigan.
No.
Right now, when the daffodils are popping and the tulips, you probably haven't been down to tulip time in forever, have you?
It was, I think, 8 years ago I was at tulip time.
Okay.
But when I lived here, I lived on Tulip Boulevard in Holland.
Oh.
We for a couple of years, and so I've seen all the tulips that I wanted to see. But what I really enjoyed was the STEM festival. And you say that, a lot of people don't know what you're talking about, but if you're familiar with tulip time, you know what the STEM festival is.
It's not unusual for them to be up a week before or a week after.
But during tulip time, you get nothing but stems.
Yes, that is exactly right. So that's funny. But this time of year, with all the early flowers popping up, the trees, getting the little greens on them.
Michigan's beautiful.
The magnolias right now. I don't know if you've driven around and saw those. Fantastic.
Yeah. But now the Bradford pears are all in beautiful bloom and everything. And that's just happened within the last couple of days that they've all popped out. So, yeah, I get it. So
until the leaves, from here till they drop off the trees, I always have felt you can't beat Michigan.
Right.
But I'm not a fan of, I guess that growing up I didn't mind winter, and I never really thought about it. But I think being in Key West and San Diego and Hawaii, where I didn't see a winter for 5 years, come back home and, this is miserable. And I'm not a skier. I'm not a snowmobiler. I don't like being out in the cold. So I tend to hibernate through the winter. I'm not very active during the winter.
So let's pick it up from you're in the police force now, and you're becoming a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And did you get the cushy shift?
Well, as I told you, I started on second shift. It's the busiest shift. They're probably the hardest working guys that you can imagine. Everything happens between probably, what was that, about 4 and
4 and 4.
right.
Yep, 12-hour shift.
So, yeah, but I also enjoyed that. You know, I was surprised that, you know, I think I thought I was going to do that for a few years and still move on to something else. And as life happens, I just, 25 years later, I'm retiring from that. But 3 or 4 years in, I ended up getting married.
Okay.
And I thought, on paper, looked like it was perfect. She went to parochial school for 12 years, just like I did. Her parents were God-fearing, like I did. She believed in education. Thought this is perfect. But in hindsight, I didn't probably seek the Lord. I thought the Lord, dropped her in my lap. I didn't say, Lord, is this the right one for me? And you look at things in hindsight now. I mean, she's still a great person, but we both got very lax in our faith. And before you know it, we even grew apart and ended up getting divorced. And that's where I realized, difference is I had kind of made God instead of a priority, he'd become a priority. If that makes sense.
It does.
And after the divorce, I started just realizing, hey, whether there's anyone else in my life, I got to put him first.
Right.
And that's exactly what I did. I said, Sundays aren't for sleeping in. When I told the story of, or just telling stories of the Navy, got people into the Navy, I got to realize that you need to talk stories about Jesus just as much, if not more. It's our stories that, otherwise, what are we doing? Are we hiding them? Putting them under the bushel basket?
Right. The Bible says that we're to be a city that's set upon a hill that cannot be hidden. That's hard sometimes.
But I always try and find a way to work that into a conversation nowadays. Just like in my days in police work, oftentimes if I'd see a troubled kid, I'd ask him, you start out, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And if the opportunity came up to it, I'd tell him, about my Navy time. Hey, you ever think of the military? Try and get them on a path. But nowadays, it's I'm not running into troubled youth that I'm trying to send to the military. Now I'm running into people that make sure they know Jesus, because we got a limited amount of time on this earth.
Yes, we do.
And whatever we do here isn't going to matter. We got two choices: be with Jesus or be with the devil. And I think more people, it seems like more people believe in heaven, but not how to get there.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like too many people believe in hell anymore.
They don't, because it's not preached about, it's not talked about. I've seen that. Do you have a tape measure, a long tape ruler? Could you grab that for me real quick, please?
Yeah.
You have no idea where this one's going, do you? But it goes back to something you said. I just want to show you something here a minute.
I believe I'll wait to sit down.
Let's just say our lifespan is at 80 years. Okay, here's the 80-year mark. Now, look on here and put your finger where your age is. Okay, you do the same, Mark.
Well, I gotta go this way because I'm the youngest one. Yes, sir.
Okay, let's say this is our lifespan from down there to 80 years. That's all behind us. This is all we've got left. I'm right here. So what we do for Christ has got to last. We don't have a whole lot of time left.
There's another way to look at this, and you may have seen it. I used to use an illustration with a rope. A tape measure is good.
Yeah,
Most people, all right, will live all the way to here or here
right,
for the last 10 to 20 years of their life.
right,
For their retirement.
Yep. They'll live that whole span for that little bit of time.
right.
More than all for eternity.
So that's, this is what we've done for Christ. This is what we got left to do for Christ.
Yeah, I don't know if I was going somewhere with that or if I was just rambling.
Well, just pick it up anywhere in there.
Let's see, I was talking about storytelling. We all have a story to tell.
Right.
And nowadays, I'm not afraid if the opportunity comes up in work to bring that up. It's just kind of if you're led to be in a position to bring that up.
Mm-hmm.
Divine appointments is what I like to call them. Just everyday conversations with people.
Right.
There's a reason that someone is in your life at that time.
That's right. So now you're in the police force and you get an opportunity to talk to people. How are some of the ways that God protected you in your job?
Oh, I'm sure I'll learn a lot more of that when I'm in heaven. Mm-hmm. Even more so than I'll ever know now. But, I don't know that there's a lot of scary times, like, even middle of the night, you have an alarm of a big open building, maybe a factory or something, and you're going into this dark building, not knowing if there's someone in there with a gun, and you and a partner are clearing this building. You don't know what you're going to encounter. And I remember a time where we had a guy trapped in a junkyard area. It was all fenced in, and he had apparently robbed someone with a 38, and we had maybe 4 of us that have it surrounded, and you don't know if he's going to start shooting or not. And a lot of places to hide in a junkyard or a factory. The junkyard, we knew that he was in there, and he ended up giving up. A lot of times you don't know. Like, that's why I remember a lot of times clearing big, large buildings, not knowing if someone's in there or not.
Right.
I had a incident where I happened to be very close by. I had gone off a patrol about the 5-year mark. I had enough seniority where I could have worked days for the rest of my career, but that was too boring to work days. It wasn't excitement. So I went into the detective unit for a number of years and ended up getting my divorce while I was in the detective unit. And Ended up later on going back to the road patrol, and that was when I met my new wife, who worked at the hospital, and they were willing to match her shift up to the road patrol. And you worked a lot more days in the detective unit than you did on road patrol, because you do the 12s. Mm-hmm. So you're working 3 12s one week and 4 12s the next. So that ended up being a better schedule, and after 8 or 9 years in the detective unit, I ended up going back to the road. And it was nice because my captain kind of begged me to stay, and it's nice to be wanted, but on the other hand, I'd been through divorce. I was going to go
Right.
do what was better for us. Going back to patrol, this was a day shift where I happened to be right near when a call came out, and it was dispatch couldn't really confirm. A lady had called on you can still call 911 on a phone that doesn't work. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it has battery, you can call 911 on it, as long as it's connecting to a tower. They're not going to know a number, and they'll have an approximate location. And someone they said a woman had called out and given an address and hung up. And I get to the address, and I don't know, my backup was still quite a ways away, but I'm going to make contact. So I knock on the door, and she yells, "Help, police, help." So I put that out over the air. I said, "Step it up for whoever's coming to back me up." I got yelling, and I said, "I'm going to go in," and figure I better check and make sure it's not unlocked before I kick the door. Mm-hmm. It was locked. Kick the door, and can see a guy on top of a gal, probably 20, 25 feet in front of me, hands around her neck, on the floor. Put him at gunpoint, walk him back to me, cuff him up, and that's about when my backup arrived. So,
Carl, what would you say, and I'm sure it changes over time, but how many domestic violence calls do police have to respond to? What would be the percentage of their workload is put into that?
That is probably their number one call. Multiple calls a day, at least in a city the size of Grand Rapids.
Yeah. I mean, we've had it in our subdivision. I remember one day looking out, and there were the Wyoming SUVs that were here. There were 5 or 6 of them all the way up around the corner here and in front of my house. And I looked out my back window, and I could see them coming up through my yard, and they were approaching a house 2 houses down. But you would have thought it was some type of a military operation, the way they carefully stayed out of sight just to approach that house. And like I said, it wasn't the next house, it was 2 houses down. And it was a full out operation, and there was a weapon involved in this one.
I was going to say, they had knowledge of a weapon.
Yeah, and I've asked the question before, and I know it's a pretty high percentage that our police officers, this is what they're responding to. And they can be very dangerous situations. Mm-hmm. There've been, I think, I dare say, you've known officers or heard of officers who were hurt or even killed responding to domestic violence calls. It's a serious thing, but anyway.
Probably the most exciting work I did, though, was, I mean, even though that one sounded exciting, the detective unit was what I really enjoyed, because that seemed a lot more, that's investigative. That's
the hunt.
Yes.
Yes.
So I enjoyed that, and but my last 12 12 years, I think, was on the road. Went back and enjoyed that. So I've been retired from law enforcement for 8.5 years now. I ended up, about the 12 years to retirement. I had a good friend of mine who owned a investment brokerage. And he said, if you get licensed, I'll let you come work for me part-time. And I said, well, I never told you that back when I was in the Navy back in San Diego, I had a lieutenant commander who probably had 35 years on, over 30, and he had been enlisted. So, he was a Mustang. He'd been around, seen a lot. When I made E5, he took me downtown San Diego to a great big glass and steel building and said, when I made E5, my department head took me to meet Leo. He was an old submariner from World War II. I set up my first IRA, and I just put $100 paycheck in that for the remaining about 3 years that I had to do, 2.5, 3 years, and was amazed. I couldn't believe how big it grew for when I got out. So by that time, so it was one of those things that I always want to learn a little more about. So when the opportunity arose, I said, yeah, I'll go back and study that. And ended up, I had a coworker who, this was 2003, invited me over to watch a Thursday night football game at his house. And I'd been invited there several times and never went. So I thought, I kind of feel an obligation to at least show up once. I knew that he had done a remodel and wanted to
show it off.
Right. So I went. Another guy that there were, I think, 5 of us there that night. There was another officer who I recognized but didn't know. Well, an officer had just been fired, and so the topic of discussion came, if you weren't a police officer, what would you do? And so I said, well, probably I'm looking at going back to school for my securities licensing, and I'd probably give that a shot. And this other guy ended up saying, that sounds interesting. He goes, when's your classes start? And I said, I don't know, it was a week or two. And he said, you mind if I take those classes with you? Well, I'm no dummy. It's always easier to have a study partner and potentially someone, to bounce off. I said, yeah, sure. So we took classes, and we ended up working part-time at that for 4 years. And at that point, we said, do you think we can start our own business? Because we weren't happy, always having to try and get someone else to approve what you want to do. And so since 2007, we've had our own investment advisory business. And that all kind of goes back to me being interested from my time in the Navy. And then, when we started our own business, what we did was just emptied out a bedroom at my house, threw a couple desks, a couple computers, a couple file cabinets, and mostly met clients at their house or at restaurants, or sometimes they'd want to come over to where we were at, and sure, we can sit at a table and meet. But that was how we started. And then eventually we outgrew that, needed to rent a place. And we did that for quite a while. And then our office building came up for sale. Our landlord decided to sell. And I said to Tim, you know what? someone else buys this, we can be on the street looking for a new place, or we can control our future and have this. So we ended up, they didn't want to just sell us our unit, they wanted to sell us 4 or 5 units, and we came to an agreement on 4. And that would more than pay our rent, but we still pay rent to ourselves. So that's been my retirement gig.
Sounds good.
Well, I enjoy it. It gets me to meet people, and I like talking, so.
Well, that's wonderful. That's great. What is one of the funniest moments you've had related in your life? Something, something really funny that's happened, whether it be on the job or in your marriage or just whatever.
Oh man, so many little funny things. What would I say is the funny? I mean, the one that always gets the laugh, the story, is when I tell them about my 5 years of sea duty.
Oh yeah, okay.
That always gets a laugh.
Yeah, that's good.
And I'll use that, I spent 5 years on sea duty.
Yeah. What's one of the saddest things that's happened to you in your career?
Now there's a lot more of in my law enforcement career. Man, there's so much death that you see. I remember I was just telling my wife this story again. I don't know how many times I've talked about it, and the dreams get less and less. But I had dreams of this. I was probably on only a year or two, and it was a Pulaski Day weekend down in Grand Rapids, and these 2 kids were fishing at the Grand River and coming back home to the west side, riding their bikes, and they both got hit by a drunk driver. And again, I happened to be right around the corner and pulled up about the same time the ambulance did, and these kids are laying in the middle of stocking. One of them had blood coming out of his eyes, ears, nose, and neither of them, I don't think, were conscious at that point, and they got a second ambulance there, and they scooped them up, and one went to St. Mary's, and one went to Butterworth. And for years, I would have dreams or nightmares of these kids, seeing them on the pavement there right in front of me. That was one of the first times, and it probably wasn't the first time because I'd been on at least a year at that point, but I think maybe because I ended up seeing them basically dying. One of them did survive, I think, but was a paraplegic or quad, I'm not sure what, and the other one died. I went to St. Mary's followed the one ambulance. The other one officer followed to Butterworth, and I remember them taking the scissors and cutting the clothes off, and how they were working like a team. It was incredible watching the medical staff. But then the legs started turning gray and twitching. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not. That was the first time I saw that. And a nurse saying, well, if he survives, those are the nerves shutting down. He'll at least be a paraplegic if he survives. So,
how did you overcome that situation? Did God help you through that?
I don't know, because I had dreams of that for years and still once in a while do. I mean, fortunately, they become less and less frequent. I don't know the answer to that. It's one of those that maybe I'll know the answer when we get to heaven.
Yeah.
I made it through a 25-year career in law enforcement, so.
Yeah.
But my wife, what I was going to say when I was telling this story to my wife again, and she's heard that before. I don't know why we brought it up recently, but we did. Oh, I think she was saying something about something that she had, and she was an ER nurse, so she had plenty of, I think she was giving me a scenario of hers, and she said, "You know what that is?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "That's PTSD. I said, "Oh, never thought of that."
Yeah.
I said, "I don't think it's never incapacitated me, but it's not fun to relive that."
No. What's one of the most profound lessons that you've learned in your career?
In my career,
Whether it be the Navy or
just life in general.
life in general.
well, if we're I would say more of on a secular side, the harder we hear so much about divisions, people saying that I didn't get this job for that reason or that reason. Success is what you make of it. The harder you work, and I know not everybody has the ability, the same sort of abilities, but my dad being a parochial school teacher, he always found a little summertime job. And by age 10, he took me out into the blueberry fields. And I was picking berries right alongside my dad for 35 cents a pail. I was a 10-year-old kid. You really don't want to be there doing that. By age 12, I was working on the back of a BEI picker with the great big fingers shaking the bushes. It's got the conveyors, takes the berries back into a 40-pound lug. Sometimes 16 hours a day. I did that from 12 to 16, hauling lugs to the trailers that the machine's picking or pulling. At 16, another buddy's father asked me if I wanted to work at his truck stop. So I did that from 16 till I joined the Navy at 18. Changing big flat tires on semis. This was a full service truck stop, so you're putting the hoses in the semis, you're checking their oil, you're cleaning their windshields. It was long, hard work, but I enjoyed it. And boy, it was a lot easier going in the Navy and writing reports.
Yeah, I hear you.
But what I did find, no matter what I did enjoy it. There wasn't a thing I didn't enjoy. And I think hard work's good for us.
It doesn't hurt, does it? What kind of advice would you give to others? If you found someone struggling, what kind of advice would you give to them?
What kind of struggles?
Life in general,
Well, I think if someone's struggling, sometimes the most important thing they need is just an ear, someone to listen to them. They don't always need
instructions.
I think oftentimes it's more important to just lend an ear than give them advice. If I feel led to give them advice, because after listening to them, maybe I will. But so many times people just want to vent. Yes.
That and you know, about the most profound thing you can do is sit and listen to them and then pray with them and pray for them. If they're, you know, acceptable to that. Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to say, do you mind if I pray with you? But that's like, I think you said it, that's after the listening.
Right. You got to find out what the situation is first.
Well, and they might not be open to it, so that's why,
Right.
you know, my wife works, she worked 31 years as a nurse and the last 11 at University of Michigan Metro Health here. And when she was an RN for those 11 years in the hospital, when she had a patient, she would often ask them, do you mind if I pray for you? And oftentimes, they'd say yes. She said it was very rare they'd say no. But if they did, you respect that.
Right. That's awesome. We're learning a lot about prayer here lately, aren't we, preacher?
We are, for sure.
Go ahead. I can't.
Anyway, my son is leading a prayer and worship group with his college friends, and they hear of somebody who needs to exercise faith in the Lord, or who needs to, something in their life. And they'll write their name on this card and they'll put it in this glass container, and then they just pray over them. And so we looked at that last night, and I bet there were 200 names in this thing. Yeah. And it's really neat to see younger people who are doing that, because my son's 19, and I can't imagine there are very many 19-year-olds that are even interested in that stuff.
Where does he go to school?
He goes to North Point Bible College right here in Wyoming at Grand Rapids First. And he's preparing for ministry. But so we've been learning a lot about prayer.
Looking back over your life, of everything that you've been through and done, what would you change if you had the privilege to do it over?
Only one thing. Because everything else has led me to where I am. But the thing that probably the only regret that I have is that period of time where I got lax in my faith. Shouldn't have allowed that. I don't know why I let myself get that way. That's it. But your importance of prayer reminds me of a quick little story that I gotta say, because it was a nothing call. How I remember this after 27, 28 years, probably shouldn't, but this one I've said it a couple times, not a lot, but I have told it before, and I think the last time I probably mentioned it was at retirement. One of the joys I had, I wasn't on the department more than 2 years, and I was working the west side, but got the northeast side was really busy, and they sent me across the river to that side to a neighbor trouble call. And they sent me and another officer. It was in an alley behind an old home, and these homes were over 100 years old. And it was, the alley between two streets with homes on each side of the alley. And there were garages off this alley too. Now, this one home, a guy had just bought it, and it had a little drainage ditch right near the garage, right along the foundation. And it probably wasn't more than, I don't know, 8 inches deep and maybe 10, 12 inches across, just enough that as water's draining down this alley, it would stay in this rather than separate into yards. And this garage that this guy had, instead of the normal where you take the turn into the garage, the 90 degree, this one was, the door was the same direction, so you could just
Pull straight in.
yes. And he had just bought this house, probably scared of his life savings here, so he didn't like the idea of water running alongside his garage, so he filled it up. He filled this and flattened the little drainage ditch. Well, now water was going into the guy across the way. So they're out in this alley about this ditch about coming to blows. One guy having water come into his yard, and the other guy worried that, my life savings, on my house, it's going to be washed away. And I just said, Lord, give me the wisdom of Solomon. That's all I said. And he said, move the ditch. So, hold on a second. I took the guy who was mad that his yard was getting flooded. I pulled him aside. I said, you stay over there, talk to this officer, and I'm going to go over here talk to this guy. I said, this guy just spent a huge amount on this house. He's worried that's going to wash away his foundation. I know it probably won't. That garage looks like it's been there 100 years and probably, but you understand where he's coming from. I said, if we just moved that ditch about a foot and a half away from the foundation, would that work for you? He goes, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I said, any chance that, he's a new neighbor and I want you to get along good. Any chance that you'd be willing to help him out with that? He goes, oh, for sure. So I said, you wait here. I'm going to go check and see if that's okay with him. Walked over there, and he's talking to the other officer, and I said, I understand your concern about your foundation being washed away. What if we moved that little, it's more or less a small trench, not a ditch, but so if we move that about a foot and a half away from your foundation? He goes, oh, that's a great idea. I said, would you be okay with him helping you do this? Yeah, that'd be great. Got them together, they're shaking hands and digging their little trench together.
Give me the wisdom of Solomon.
It's amazing what a little prayer can do.
Sometimes the shortest prayers are the best ones.
Yeah, you don't need to get all theological and all that when you pray.
God help me.
The other officer said, where in the world did you come up with that? And I'm embarrassed to say at the time I didn't say it. I've said it a few times since, but at the time I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and walked away.
Kind of reminds me about the two women arguing over the babies. And they said,
Exactly.
well, we'll just cut the baby in half.
But it sure felt like the wisdom of Solomon when it popped in my brain. And I mean, when I said that little prayer, it popped like that. I mean, there was no hesitation. Like, it didn't take a minute, it didn't take 2 minutes, it didn't take 5 minutes to come into my brain. I knew that was from the Lord.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to your story today?
Nah, I don't think so.
You've covered it well. That's great. I've enjoyed your story. One thing that I want to do before we close out here is we want to give you an invitation to be able to know this Jesus that we talked about here today. You know, He's an awesome God. I can't personally live without Him. I've tried, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so we want to give you this opportunity to know Him. Acts 16:31 says, if you believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, thou shalt be saved and thy house. All it takes is to believe. Romans chapter 3:23 says, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Romans 6:23 tells us, for the wages of that sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. Jesus died on the cross for our sins. We've all heard John 3:16. You know, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever is me and is you, that whosoever would believe in Him will not perish, but have everlasting life. You see, we're guaranteed of heaven or hell. And it's up to us to make that decision where we want to spend eternity. Jesus sent His Son to die for us that we could spend it in heaven. I've been told all my life what heaven is like. You know, streets of gold, gates of pearl, walls of jasper. None of that means anything to me. When I get to heaven, what I want to do is I want to go see Jesus. And I want to thank Him for dying on the cross for my sins, that I could believe and I could spend eternity with Him. And that's the exciting thing to me. So today we want to invite you, if you don't know Jesus as your personal Savior, we want to invite you to just believe. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Just shoot me a DM. I'll put my email in the description down below. Feel free to email me. I'll be glad to talk with you. But in the meantime, we just want you to know that we love you and we want to spend eternity with you in heaven. Well, preacher, it's time. It's trivia time.
Carl didn't know he was going to get a quiz today, did he?
No,
Actually, you're not. We ask a couple of questions on every one of our podcasts. You think about this and reply in the comments, and we'll be glad to have your answers. But what king was the psalmist of Israel? Old Testament question. He wrote a lot of the Psalms. Who was he? And who wrote 2 books of the New Testament that have only 1 chapter? Wrote 2 books of the New Testament that have only 1 chapter. Who was that?
Who was the author?
Who was the author? Who wrote the books?
Well, there you have it. There's your 2 questions. And all you have to do is reply in the comments. In the meantime, thank you for joining us. May God bless you richly. I'm Casey.
I'm Mark.
I'm Carl.
Have a blessed day.